Hi folks, welcome back. Hope you're well. Well, it's been an interesting week in the lead up to Christmas. A lot of things have been said on the news, and one that struck me, folks, was that people in Japan, around 50,000 I think, have been living till they're over 100 years old. Now that's amazing, and you don't get that statistic here in the UK, definitely not. You know, it's a sad time in a lot of ways as well. It reminds me years ago of my mother sitting in a very cold house because she didn't have any money when she was in her old age, and that's happening to a lot of pensioners here as well in the UK. They're sitting in cold houses all day. Some of them don't get out of their beds till maybe evening time so they can try to keep warm, and a lot of your hospital beds right now are full of pensioners who's got the flu because they've been sitting in cold houses. Now, is it no a time for change in this country? Should we no put provisions aside, the government that is, so that people who are in their old age, myself included, can be warm all winter to save the NHS from massive bills? Now, I know it's going to cost money, but everything costs money, you know, and this government doesn't seem to put Britain first. They put immigrants first, and I've not got nothing against immigrants, you know, and I've not got nothing against refugees. These people have nothing as well, but our own people, especially the old, especially the people who are on their own, sitting in these cold houses, you know, it's just no on. It's 2025, we're almost into a new year, 2026, so what can we do about it? Now folks, can we live to 100 like the people do in Japan, and would we want to? Well, a lot of people here say they wouldn't want to live to 100. Now, the reason for that is because they've not got a purpose in life anymore. Day after day is much the same. They're sitting on their own, and nobody comes round to see them. There's nothing really exciting on the TV for them to watch anymore. So hope starts to go, especially if you're sitting in a cold house. You've no family around you. Now in Japan and places like that, you've got family around you, and it makes you want to go on. You know, there might be a new granddaughter coming, or a new grandson, or whatever, but that gives you the will to carry on, you know. You've got a purpose to see those kids growing up. You've got people coming in cheering you up, people, you know, sitting with you when you're eating your dinner, people taking you out for wee days out, all that sort of thing. And it's important to have a purpose, you know. And if you don't have a purpose, then, you know, I've heard it so many times for so many people here that they didn't really want to go on because of that, you know. Sad, but it's life. It's life here. Now, I think it's time that the government's concentrating on things like that, and there's ways to change it, you know. We're getting a lot of, as I say, we talk about immigrants coming in, and they're all kind of family orientated people, you know. And the immigrants we've already got, like, you know, people from Pakistan and India, you know, you see these people living to their 100 because there's always a purpose, because there's so many people around and so much life going on. And we'll shun all that, we'll criticise it, we'll say that's not the British way of life. But folks, there's no a British way of life anymore. You know, we're all in this get together, we're all under one roof. And it's time people here saw that, you know, started putting things back into perspective, back into family way of life, and not just family way of life, just community way of life, helping people, giving them a purpose to go on, because it's important to have a purpose in life. And if without that, well, there's nothing, you know. And it's a sad fact, there's nothing. Maybe we should ponder that idea at Christmas time, and you know, try to sort of think differently in the new year, because the new year's coming and we're going to do the same again. We're going to get to 26 without a purpose. The best resolution I think you can think of would be to find a purpose, not just to stop smoking or stop drinking or stop gambling or stop eating sweeties, just to find a purpose, you know. And you might think, you might see yourself living to a lot longer because you've got a purpose, you've got a will to go on. So when you lose that will and that purpose, that's when things start to go downhill, folks. And ponder that fact, and it might see some nice changes in 26. Now folks, it's not always about government, it's not always them to blame, you know. I know we blame them for a lot of things and they are wrong in a lot of ways, but you know, if you look out to these Asian countries, in Japan, Philippines, Thailand, it's a different culture. Old folk are looked after and they're respected, you know, where here old folk aren't looked after and they're no respected. You know, our families, well, they're not as big as out in Asia, perhaps, and sometimes people here don't have families and they've no one to look after them. And then what happens, it's the nursing home sort of thing when you get to a certain age, and if that person has got their own house, then it's sold to pay the bills in the nursing home. But in places like the Philippines and Thailand, you know, the families look after the old people, and it's just the way it's always been. You know, you didn't see a lot of nursing homes in Asia. It's a kind of, I think I'm doing a mountain bike trail here, folks, this morning, going over all these bumps. But yeah, there's different values. The values here are more self-centred values, where you see a lot of family over in Asia working for the family, you know, putting money back into the family, helping the family, and so that doesn't involve the government, you know, so we can't blame them for everything. But you know, Western society's got a sort of, I don't know, it's a different sort of way, obviously, but I don't think it's the right way, because at the end of the day, who do we blame? We blame the government, we shout at the government, and there's nothing really the government can do. You know, some of your problems start with yourself, with your families, and all that sort of thing, folks. You know, the older folk in Japan have got a purpose, you know, they've got something to go on for, where unfortunately in this country a lot of old people don't have a purpose. They just wake up every morning and every day is the same, you know. And I've been finding that myself, you know, if I don't keep active, every day is the same, you know, and you feel you've not got a purpose. Now, I've not got a family, I've not got a big family, I've just got my wife. But My wife's from the Philippines, and I've learned a lot from my wife regarding things like that. And you know, I look back at my own family when my mum and dad was alive. You know, they were very poor. My dad was a refugee during the war, and came to this country with nothing. So I don't knock the fact that some people have to come over here because they've got nothing. People didn't realise what it's like to have nothing at all, you know, just the clothes that you've got here back. That's it. So maybe this Christmas we can spare a thought for these folks, especially the old ones sitting with no heating in their houses. And it's not just one or two, that's probably close to more than 1 million pensioners in Britain are like that. And you know, even if it's just a wee thought for maybe 30 seconds, think about them. I think it will help you in the coming year if you spare a thought for people who have got less than we actually have. And stop blaming other people for your misfortune. I know it's a crap government, folks, I know, but that's life. We can either just shout about it or stamp our feet and get virtually nowhere by doing that and getting ourselves all upset, or we can actually try to make our own changes. Starting by helping a few people, perhaps. You don't have to give a lot, but you know, it's just you know, you don't have to be religious or anything like that, but just saying the odd prayer for those people, just saying something simple like, can God help these people? Can the governments help these people? But more or less, can the families help these people? The ones that's been abandoned? Or can your neighbour help these people? Because I know myself, the street where I'm in, it took me years to get to know neighbours, and some of them I didn't even recognise because I never saw them, you know. And if you'd maybe been in the house on your own and you took ill and you couldn't get to your phone, you would just be there all day on your own, you know. This is the bad side of Christmas, folks. The side that we try to hide in this country. Overseas in Asia, we didn't hide it, you know, because it's there all the time, and we cope with it because we're involved in it, and there's purpose, you know, where there's no real purpose here in a lot of ways. I'm not saying all over, but it's a sad fact that in Western countries today this is happening. So, while you're eating your Christmas turkey, spare a thought for these folks. Say a wee prayer, and let's hope 26 is better than what it's been this year. That's all the day, folks. So, again, enjoy yourselves at Christmas, and we'll see you hopefully in the new year. Bye bye for now.